My sister-in-law is pregnant. The night our whole family was celebrating, my brother's first love showed up with a pregnancy test result, demanding he take responsibility. Henry, usually so reserved, clung to Lily shamelessly, saying, "She's framing me. You're the only one I've loved. She's just trying to stir up trouble." I grinned at the woman who destroyed our family in the past. "We've been waiting for you." At the dinner table, Lily announced she was pregnant. Henry was shocked. My mom cried. My dad laughed. I breathed a sigh of relief. Finally, we made it to this day. In our past lives, on the day Lily announced her pregnancy, the first love showed up with a pregnancy test result, making Henry take responsibility. Henry, innocent his whole life, was overwhelmed for the first time, missing the chance to explain. Lily thought Henry was unfaithful. After several arguments with the first love, she got so upset she had a miscarriage. After the miscarriage, she rushed through a divorce with Henry, ignoring my parents' pleas. After the divorce, Henry had a mental breakdown and, under pressure, ended up marrying his first love. Soon after the marriage, the first love revealed her true intentions. She wasn't pregnant and had her eye on our soon-to-be demolished family house. Once the compensation came through, she took all the money and disappeared. My parents died in a car accident chasing after her. Henry lost his mind completely. And me? I ended up with cancer, dying on a snowy night, unknown to anyone. Calming down, we decided to have a proper celebration. Ever since realizing I had been reborn, our family carefully followed the past life's paths. All our efforts weren't wasted, bringing us to this day. Lily is the only one in our family not reborn, and she's the happiest. On the first day of being reborn, Henry declared to treat Lily well, and no one was allowed to bully her. My parents nodded quickly while I just rolled my eyes. Henry went crazy early on, and my parents passed away early. They didn't know Lily was actually a hidden boss. When I returned, I didn't tell them Lily's father was the wealthiest in our city. She married into our family, against her parents' wishes, hiding her identity because she saw Henry's sincere honesty. In the past, after their divorce, Lily never remarried, inheriting her father's company and becoming the city's first female tycoon. In this life, hearing Lily was pregnant, my parents immediately went to the market, buying all her favorite foods. Henry worried I'd be upset, so he slipped me $200 for my favorite takeout. I refused it. My brother, who wasn't well off to start, handed over all his paychecks after marrying. This $200, who knows how long he saved it. During dinner, I kept an eye on the clock. As it hit a certain time, there was a knock on the door. Henry and I exchanged glances. "It's happening." My parents' hands were trembling a bit. I glanced at them. Geez, they've been through so much and got reborn. Why so nervous? Luckily, they quickly calmed down, kept smiling, and loaded Lily's plate. I was in charge of opening the door. As soon as I did, Gina pushed past me, heading straight for Henry. "Henry, you heartless man, this is your doing." Gina threw the pregnancy test on the table. "I'm pregnant, it's yours." Lily instinctively looked at Henry, who was quicker, hugging her and saying nervously, "She's falsely accusing me. You're the only one I've loved in this life. She's trying to scam me." Lily was stunned by his action. After all, Henry never hugged her in front of others, let alone my parents. Before long, Lily's face turned red. You can let go now." "No. Listen, I stayed at a friend's place after the reunion. We crashed in the same room. She took advantage of me being drunk, making it look like something happened between us. My friend can testify. I'm not interested in anyone but you." Lily's face practically hit her knees. "Just stop talking." Gina was dumbfounded. She looked at Henry in disbelief. "Henry, I followed you so innocently. How can you be so heartless?" Henry looked at Lily with deep affection. "My conscience was eaten by my wife a long time ago. Do you have any other business? If not, don't ruin our celebration." Gina finally regained some sense. "I'm carrying your child. With our family's ties, are you going to leave me hanging?" Henry finally glanced at her, more like a side eye. "Do you have evidence the child is mine? There's no other man besides you." Henry looked like he swallowed something unpleasant. "Aren't you marketable? Why target a married man? I know whether I did anything with you." Gina left, crying. My parents laughed loudly because Lily's baby was safe. I gave Henry a thumbs up. 3 years ago, when Henry came back to the past, it was his wedding night with Lily. He cried in my parents' arms, saying he got so angry when Gina showed up in his past life that he didn't defend himself in time, giving her an opportunity. Later, after Lily's miscarriage, she refused to see us, cutting off all contact, which only caused misunderstandings to linger, leading to that tragic outcome. Reborn Henry often told me I lost my mind. Now I know Lily is more important than my life. If not for you stopping me, I would have burned Gina's house down the moment I returned. Luckily, this life he's taken the lead and secured Lily first. Not bad, he didn't give Lily a chance to clash with Gina. After all of Henry's antics, Lily kept her head down during dinner and rushed to her room afterward. That night, Henry snuck up to me. In the last life, I was crazy for too long I forgot what Gina did next. You still remember? In the past life, Gina got surveillance tapes from Henry's friend's house, altered them, making Lily believe something happened, leading her to cut ties with Henry. I bet Gina's on her way to mess with the surveillance at Henry's brother's place right now, but she's gonna be real disappointed. I got to Henry's brother a couple of days ago, snagged the footage from that day and deleted the whole thing. Henry wasn't even drunk that day. To make sure Gina didn't get any advantage, he was wrapped up tightly in his clothes. I told him to stay still. Otherwise, things could have gone sideways and my plan would have fallen apart. Afterwards, I gave Henry a backup of the footage. He looked at me gratefully. I didn't waste my affection on you, he said. Once I explain everything to Lily, I'll find you a great husband. I glanced at Henry. With your taste, maybe figure out Lily first. He hasn't even got his own relationship sorted, so where does he get the confidence to set me up? I knew Gina wouldn't back off easily, but I wasn't expecting her to come on so strong. The next morning, I was woken up by crying from the living room. Facepalming, I opened my door and saw Gina had brought backup. I glanced towards Henry's room. The door was half open, so he must have gone out. Great, today's mess is on me. Luckily, I warned my parents last night not to act rashly. We need evidence to trap Gina with no escape. Just exposing her isn't enough justice. Gina kept crying for ages without Henry showing up. She took a peek towards his room. Is Henry still asleep? He wasn't like this before. Ever since he got married, he doesn't wake up early anymore. The elders were right. A bad wife can ruin generations. I snorted. My brother used to wake up early, 'cause he had no wife to keep him warm. Now that he does, you think he'd want to get up? Gina froze for a second, then pitifully said, I've only ever shared a bed with Henry since childhood, just that one time. I couldn't possibly know what it feels like. I nodded. Yeah, spending just a minute lying next to him doesn't really tell you anything. Gina got mad. Who says only a minute? I was with him all night. Gina's parents couldn't hold back, Sally. We know Gina. She wouldn't wrongly accuse your brother. They've known each other for years, and if they both hadn't gotten so drunk that night, it wouldn't have come to this. My dad was ready to strike and my mom was fuming. I signaled them to keep calm. Fighting the urge to throw the surveillance footage in her face, I retorted, if you're so sought after, why bother with my brother? What's in it for you? As I said this, I made sure to catch that flicker of guilt in Gina's eyes, gone in a flash. What else would I want? The deed's done. Can't I ask him to take responsibility? I just stared at her, silent. Watching her squirm, my mom spoke up. We're reasonable people. All right, if you claim you're carrying our grandchild, Sally will go with you for a checkup. If it's true, we'll take responsibility. Gina's eyes lit up. Sure, Sally. You and I will go, and when we're back, make sure you tell them the truth. Does she still think I'm that clueless idiot who used to chase after her? If there's something I regret over 2 lifetimes, being Gina's naive puppet would top the list. I remember once Gina had me hit her when Henry was on his way back from class. I barely touched her, yet she lay on the ground wailing. Henry thought I did something terrible to her and rushed her to the hospital. I don't know what the doctor said, but Henry stopped me from hanging out with her afterwards. My brain was still in a fog back then. A few sweet words from Gina and I went along with her schemes like a fool. It wasn't until Henry distanced himself from her and married Lily that I started to wise up. After my world fell apart, I trailed Gina for a while and realized it was all part of her plot. She always looked down on Henry, calling him dense and stupid. If he weren't good-looking and honest, he wouldn't have even qualified as her backup plan. I agreed to go to the hospital with her for the checkup. On the way, she found a reason to send me away briefly. I played along but didn't go far. When the door opened, she handed me the pregnancy checkup document with a gleeful face. Look for yourself. I glanced at it. Apart from slightly elevated HCG levels, nothing indicated she was pregnant. I tucked the papers away and headed towards the ultrasound room. Gina grabbed me. Where are you going? To get an ultrasound. Her eyes widened at me. Didn't we just finish the checkup? Let's go back, and you make sure to tell them I'm having Henry's baby. I didn't budge and dragged her towards the ultrasound room instead. I checked with the obstetrics and it's best for an exam. You're already at the 12-week mark for an NT. I looked it up, might as well get it done. Gina yanked her arm away. Are you crazy, Sally? What's wrong with you? You've never had kids. Don't listen to nonsense. I fixed my gaze on her, then suddenly looked over her shoulder. Lily, how's your checkup? How many weeks? Gina hadn't processed Henry's presence, but my words made her scream. She's pregnant? Henry, how could you get her pregnant? Henry wrapped his arm around Lily. Why wouldn't I get my own wife pregnant? Gina pointed at her belly. But how can you have two women pregnant at the same time? With the checkup area crowded, Gina's words drew everybody's attention. They stared at Henry like he was the ultimate sleaze. However, Henry was cool about it. He gave Lily a kiss and softly said, Lily, no matter what you hear later, don't freak out. I'm all yours. Don't believe any flashy, seductive nonsense out there. Lily nodded sweetly. Need my help? This is small stuff. I can handle it. You just stand aside. Gina's eyes turned green with envy. Henry leisurely rolled up his sleeves, showing off the muscles he trained to impress Lily after his transformation. I know I look decent, but not to the point of being mistaken for the father just walking down the street. My woman is right here. It takes a real jerk to bust up someone else's home like that. Out of instinct, I glanced at Lily, and sure enough, her face was red. Henry continued, if you can bring proof that she's carrying my kid, I'll have my wife kick me out. Gina was speechless, not able to form a complete sentence for ages. Lily couldn't take it anymore, playfully punching Henry. She's just a girl, you should save her some face. How about I go with her for an amniocentesis whenever she's available? Before Henry could respond, Gina lost it. I don't want that. You guys just want to hurt me. I won't give you a chance to harm my baby. With that, she ran off. Henry and I exchanged glances. Could she not handle it? I wasn't worried about Gina staying away because our family's relocation paperwork would be finalized in less than a month. So how did Gina know about it? She had an uncle working in the relevant department who gave her the heads up. Under the current policy, our relocation would earn us 3 apartments in the city center plus compensation. One of those apartments later increased in value by dozens of times. In my past life, while Henry was all messed up, Gina gave one of those apartments to her uncle and kicked my parents out, moving her own parents in. Thinking about all this from my past life, I clenched my fists tightly. As usual, I went out and got cornered by Gina in an alley. She seemed to have forgotten our bad blood, clinging to my arm. I had to choke back my disgust to keep from pushing her off right away. Sally, I know I shouldn't wreck your brother Lily's marriage, but I really like him. Could you help me one last time? I glanced at a blood bag peeking from her pocket. Help you with what? Gina replied, help me test if your brother has feelings for me, okay? If he doesn't, I'll terminate the pregnancy and never bother him again. I nodded, okay. Gina was thrilled, handing me a prepared stick. Sally, you gotta really hit me this time. Make it convincing. I hesitated, what if I hurt you? You won't, just aim for the fleshy spots. It'll be fine. Don't worry, even if you go too far, I won't hold it against you. That's exactly what I was waiting for her to say. I still hesitated, I really can't do it. Maybe if you turn around, I won't have to see your face and can hit you. Gina was so eager for someone to end the pregnancy for her. She quickly agreed and turned around. Fine, I'll turn. Hurry. With her eagerness, she must have known Henry was nearby. I looked around and sure enough saw Henry and Lily at the street corner. Lily seemed to want some roadside sausage and milk tea. I saw her take just one sip before Henry grabbed it and tossed it in the trash. What a wasteful guy. Lily quickly finished the sausage and grinned at Henry. Instead of being mad, Henry affectionately pinched her cheek. Gina nudged me again, why haven't you hit me yet? Right now, right now. I looked back again, and Henry was already crossing the street with Lily. I stretched a bit and swung the stick at her pocket. Maybe it triggered something. A flood of ignored memories came rushing back. In my last life after Henry divorced Lily, our whole family tried every possible way to explain things to Lily, but we got stonewalled every time. Henry was already a wreck, and Gina's parents broadcasted the narrative that Henry got Gina pregnant and denied it, worsening his condition. They even took advantage of me while I was at the hospital with my sick parents by stealing our household book, forcing Henry to marry her. I had to handle my parents' funerals all by myself. Afterwards, as I dragged my tired self back home, I found Gina and some brawny guys there. I turned to leave but was too late. They grabbed me, forcing something down my throat, causing me to lose consciousness immediately. When I awoke, I found myself locked in a damp, dark basement. After that, I was trapped in a cage, strung up in the air, and thrown onto a stage like an item being picked. I clutched the stick tighter, hitting Gina relentlessly with all my might. "Sally, Sally, stop. You have to stop." Henry's voice brought me back to reality, and I hazily looked at Gina. Gina was curled up on the ground, her face in pain, with one leg of her pants stained red. I immediately calmed down, pretending to be frantic as I tossed the stick aside, clutching Gina as I cried, "I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I told you I couldn't hit you hard, but see, the blood bag broke." On hearing this, Gina denied it through clenched teeth despite the pain. "What blood bag? You said you'd help me end the pregnancy." Passers-by, seeing Gina's state, gathered around and scolded me, accusing me of being too harsh for a young girl. I, teary-eyed, pulled out the bag from her pocket. "None of you believe me. What I hit was this, not her. If you don't believe me, we can go to the hospital for an injury assessment." After living in darkness in my past life, I knew where to hit so it hurt but left no visible marks. Henry and Lily agreed with me, suggesting we all go for an injury assessment. Gina originally aimed for Henry to see me attack and terminate the pregnancy, but she didn't count on me stepping in. She refused to go to the hospital, asking me to take her home to recover. As we hesitated, some concerned bystanders called an ambulance, saying we couldn't get away without accountability. In the hospital, Gina had a hard time, insisting the doctors check her repeatedly. She swore she was pregnant and that I caused her miscarriage, causing a scene like some hysterical character. The young doctor kept a straight face, saying, "Are you doubting the hospital's professionalism? You're not pregnant, nor do you have external injuries. Even if you went elsewhere, they'd find the same." Gina glared at me angrily and pushed me to the ground, hitting me. A lot of people saw it. With tears in my eyes, I pulled out my phone and started recording. "But you insisted that I hit you, remember?" The moment I played the recording, everyone went silent. Gina looked at me like she wanted to eat me alive. When Gina got out of bed to grab me, Henry immediately got me out of the hospital room, and that young doctor followed us out. He stopped in front of me and said, "You don't look so good. You should get a full checkup." I was stunned, meeting his deep eyes, and suddenly remembered this guy. Back when Henry was in the hospital in my past life, I used to run into him often. The first thing he said to me back then was exactly the same as now. I didn't expect we'd meet again in this life. I thanked him and headed back home with Henry and Lily. Lily wanted to ask me a few times, but Henry kept changing the subject. That night, she came to me quietly. "Sally, all this started because of Henry. Don't shoulder it alone. If you need help, let me know. I might be able to do something." I smiled. "Lily, I actually do need your help." Lily's eyes lit up. "What do you need?" Gina's family had their eyes on my family's compensation money and house and came over again the next day. My parents decided not to take it anymore and stopped them at the door. They went all out and finally vented the frustration of 5 years since my reincarnation. Gina's family left all battered and bruised. My parents were impressive to hold on this long. Several times, passing their room at night, I heard them gritting their teeth, recalling past life stuff, saying despite being 100 years old together, they couldn't see through Gina's tricks. Otherwise, we wouldn't be in such a mess. My dad even sleepwalked and went to the kitchen for a knife. Thankfully, the noise woke my mom up, preventing a tragedy. We can't jeopardize ourselves in revenge. I kept counseling my dad, telling him not to rush our vengeance, and certainly not to make it easy on them. Revenge is best served cold. Our small factory is doing okay currently. Henry, apart from waiting for the right moment these days, has been taking Lily to the factory whenever he's free. In my past life, the factory was doing a little better under Henry, but Gina's antics led to bankruptcy. So, this lifetime upon rebirth, my parents let Henry reform freely. He bounced back in just 2 years, and the factory's doing even better than before. Now my family looks poor only on the surface. After venting, my parents felt so good they went to the market hand in hand. Henry and Lily came back, seeing the lavish dinner on the table, confused. Are we having guests? Nope, my parents said happily. They made all our favorite dishes. Wash up and eat. But someone didn't want us to enjoy our meal. It didn't take long before Gina showed up again. This time she brought a bunch of reporters and influencers instead of her parents. They forced their way into our house, cameras and phones pointed at us. Henry reacted fast, protecting Lily as they went into a room. Once Lily locked the door, he stood in front of me and slammed Gina's phone down. Isn't this endless? Fine, let's settle our scores once and for all then. I've never seen Henry this dark before, and instinctively pulled my parents aside. Gina was heartbroken as she pleaded with Henry. Why can't you see me for once? How am I worse than that girl from the countryside? Oh yes, Lily's residency is still in the countryside because it hadn't been transferred. It's also the reason nobody ever thought she had another hidden identity. Henry sneered. Ever looked in a mirror? Do you compare to my wife? Impossible. She didn't even go to high school or college here. I have a city registration. She just married you for it. I was stunned. I knew Gina had no limits, but where did her superiority complex come from anyway? Just when I was about to speak, Henry mocked, You mean with your 300-square-foot apartment? Gina, if it weren't for your dad working at our factory, you wouldn't even have that housing. Where's that air of superiority from? Gina turned pale. Knowing she couldn't win against Henry on this ground, she turned to the influencer's cameras. This factory's little boss bullies others, shelters the culprit, and wants to alter my medical records to sweep things under the rug. I'm telling you, not gonna happen. Give me compensation or I'll sue you. Henry was unfazed. Go ahead if you have evidence. If not, I'll make sure you regret it. Gina was speechless and didn't dare say another word. She hadn't seen Henry like this either and was a bit intimidated, considering her dad still worked at our factory. With Henry in charge now, if she rubbed him the wrong way, her dad would be out of a job too. She thought about it and redirected her focus to me. Sally. I shivered and played the recording when Gina asked me to hit her. The influencers perked up at the twist, eyes sparkling. I tried to squeeze out a few tears. Why would you frame me? You asked me to hit you and now you're turning on me. Without this recording, would you send me to jail? Gina, I thought we were friends and this is how you treat me? Gina was flabbergasted. I kept acting. I heard your brother found a girlfriend and plans to get married. You wouldn't be trying to set me up for some wedding money, would you? In my past life, after escaping from a trafficker's den and returning here, I ran into her brother's wedding. It was such a grand event. Anyone would think a wealthy family was having a celebration. That's when I realized Gina's ultimate goal was our house and money. Gina probably didn't expect me to put 2 and 2 together, and she began to panic. What nonsense are you saying? My brother's marriage has nothing to do with me. My family isn't broke, and my brother's a top student. I laughed. You mean the top student who was forced to drop out in middle school? If Gina's brother had been even a bit more diligent, her family wouldn't be struggling now. But he was lazy, working at an internet cafe, constantly asking their parents for money. Seeing things spiraling out of control, Gina took the influencers with her and left. She didn't realize some of the reporters stayed behind and even interviewed me. The journalist was someone Lily reached out to, a pretty famous local TV reporter. Had Gina been more observant of the people around her, she wouldn't have given us this opportunity. But maybe she found out and thought it was to help her or something, right? The next morning, early, Gina was pounding on my door like crazy. I'd been wrapped in my pajamas, just sitting by the bed all night waiting for her. What took her so long? I shuffled to the door and cracked it open. You need something? Gina's eyes were red, and she looked furious. Sally, I'm gonna kill you. Who told you to release those videos and recordings? Who told you? I pressed my ear. You're so loud. Gina went nuts trying to push the door open. Let me in, open up. I had a security chain on so she couldn't actually get it open despite trying hard. She attempted to sneak her hand through the gap to undo the chain. I leaned gently against the door, and she let out a painful yelp. I looked at her squished hand, showing no expression. It reminded me of when I lost those fingers in my past life. Compared to that, her pain was nothing. Henry's door opened and I eased back when I saw Lily come out. Gina left crying and cursing. I yawned. Time for a nap. Gina tried to go viral through influencers online accusing our family, but I had credible evidence against her, passed on to a reputable TV journalist. Overnight, public opinion flipped. Suddenly, everyone sympathized with us. Oddly enough, Henry and Lily's relationship only got stronger despite Gina's antics. Lily, ever helpful, reached out to TV journalists after I asked her, getting straight to the point. Henry asked later how I managed to contact the local TV station. I just gave him a mysterious smile. Your sisters live twice, this is nothing. He stopped asking. The day we got the demolition notice, our street was buzzing with excitement. Didn't expect that evening, 20 grand my mom withdrew just vanished. She planned to give the workers a bonus. We called the cops immediately, and the case cracked open fast. Thanks to a car's dashcam nearby, they caught 2 thieves, Gina and her brother. They got nabbed with the goods, confessed about the stolen 20 grand. But we lost not just that, another 30 grand from a business deal with my dad vanished too. So the police raided Gina's home overnight and found the missing 30 grand. Rumor has it, when cops showed up, Gina's folks were counting the money. Caught red-handed. Gina's parents even tried to grab a fistful of cash while cuffed, claiming it was theirs. Gina's whole family got busted for burglary. Gina got 8 years, her folks each got 3. Later I visited Gina in jail. She'd put on weight and glared at me with hatred. You set me up, didn't you? Sally, it was all you, wasn't it? I brushed off her accusations. Seems you're doing all right in here. Hopefully next time I visit, you'll look worse. Gina looked like she wanted to strangle me. Sally, even in death, I won't let you go. We'll see about that when you're a ghost. On Lily's due date, we were all at the hospital. Henry was so nervous his legs were shaking. He paced around trying to hide it, making us all dizzy. The birth went well. Lily had a daughter. When the nurse was ready to hand the baby to Henry, he was glued to the surgery room door, desperate to see. My parents laughed and took the baby for checks, leaving me with Henry. Once we saw Lily, big guy Henry couldn't stop crying as he hugged her. Nurses couldn't pry him off. I yelled, "You're pressing on Lily's stitches." He jumped back instantly. Lily giggled despite herself. At the hospital door, I overheard Henry softly telling Lily, "Let's not have more kids. No more after this." Lily said, "Your business is booming, we can afford kids." Henry shook his head. "Everything I earn is for you. Why else would I work?" I slipped away quietly. Henry still had no idea Lily wasn't short on money. And if Lily didn't bring it up, I'd let that secret stay buried. My parents treated Lily just like me, no in-law drama. They never wronged her. Revenge taken, life settled. No more regrets. Suddenly, a person blocked my path. I realized it was that young doctor again. He frowned at me. "Have you been checked out?" I nodded, pretending I had. "Let me see the report," he said stubbornly, not falling for my deflection. "I'm just kidding, aren't you an OBGYN?" I joked. He didn't budge. "I'd like to see the report." I hadn't gone for a checkup, so what could I show him? I decided to sidestep him. But he called out with certainty, "Early-stage cancer can be treated with good prognosis. I suggest you check in for treatment now." I frowned, ready to respond, when I heard Henry shout behind me, "Sally!" Oh, my family and Henry found out about my condition and kept calm. They organized everything efficiently for me. My dad and Henry dragged me off for tests. I got more antsy the longer it went on. "Henry, Lily just gave birth, go stay with her." He replied firmly. "She asked me to come. If I hadn't held her back, she'd have come herself." I turned to my dad. "Dad, Mom left soup on the stove, can you check on it?" Dad's face was even grimmer than Henry's. "It's been simmering since last night. Lily should be sipping some now." I sulked. "With those faces, you're making me feel like I really got cancer or something." Henry and Dad shared a glance. Results came back. Early-stage kidney cancer. No spreading, thank goodness. We all sighed in relief as they promptly arranged treatment. Somehow, young Dr. Bruce became my primary physician. He was diligent, and my folks looked at him like a future son-in-law. I had to pull back after leaving the hospital, cutting off contact with him. 6 months later, while I was lying in bed, struggling about whether to roll over, my dad walked in with a big grin and brought someone along. When I saw who it was, my heart sank. My dad didn't care about how I felt and brought him straight to my room, kindly telling me, "Sally, Bruce came to see you. Get up and entertain him." Then he closed the door behind him. After struggling with myself for a while, I reluctantly sat up and tidied my hair. After being in the hospital for so long, Bruce had seen me at my worst. He chuckled and messed up my freshly combed hair, asking, "How are you feeling?" "Not bad. Just put on some weight from lying around too much," I replied. He grinned again. "Wanna go somewhere?" "No," I said. After dealing with Gina's family, anywhere but my bed felt too far. Bruce insisted, "Come on, you'll like it." I stared at him. "Bruce, I've always wondered, how did you know I had cancer?" "Maybe it was in a past life," he said. I tensed up, my gaze suddenly more guarded. He laughed softly, "Or maybe in a dream, but it wasn't a good one." I ended up going out with Bruce that day. He took me to a hillside behind the hospital. There was a big tree, and on it hung some familiar wishing ribbons. Seeing the ribbons brought back memories. At that time, Henry was kind of losing it and refused to cooperate with his treatment. After Lily passed, my parents were devastated and too overwhelmed with housing issues to care for Henry. The responsibility fell on me. Every time Henry had a treatment, I was utterly drained. Whenever I felt overwhelmed, I'd come to this tree, treating it like my lifeline, making wishes. The wishing ribbons on the tree now were identical to the ones I hung in my previous life. I suddenly understood. "Bruce, so you notice me in our past life too?" I asked. "I stood at the office window watching you wish intently every day," he said. "I thought, this has to be a kind and strong girl." Later on, when we interacted, I was even more drawn to you. But the day you brought Henry back to the hospital was the last time I saw you. Bruce told me